Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my channel for another Hot Toys / Hono Studio 1/6 scale figure unboxing and review. Today, we're taking a look at Brown Suit Wolverine. Now, I got mine at a discount from Pop Collectibles. As always, do your own research, make sure you're comfortable before buying. I have popped a link to their site in the description below, along with the discount code Justin's Collection, for 5% off your order if you do decide to buy from them. While you're down there, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button, so you're notified as soon as a brand new Hono Studio figure review goes live on the channel. While the tiger stripe look is my all-time favorite outfit for Logan in the comics, the brown costume comes in a very close second, so I am glad that Hono Studio decided to tackle this. However, why is this guy a limited release? Doesn't that defeat the whole purpose of the new Hono Studio sub-brand? I'm pretty sure they were trying to make their figures more accessible, and locking something like this behind an exclusive wall just doesn't make sense to me. And they also literally couldn't be bothered to make a Hono Studio exclusive sticker. They've just slapped a Hot Toys one on the front of the box. As for the box art, we've got an image of Logan in his brown suit, but this is not representative of the figure inside the box at all. His ear wings are too small and they're brown, plus his claws are too small. We've got his name up front, an X-Men logo, another X-Men logo, as well as his name in that classic comic book Wolverine font. On the side of the box, Wolverine, another X-Men logo, as well as the door to Cerebro, I think. Around the back, warnings and legal information, as well as some figure photography. The way this box opens up is quite unique. You lift the bottom flap first, and the X-Men logo comes along with it. Then you can open up the top part. There is a read-up on the slipcover. It's essentially just a whole bunch of fluff and nonsense, but if you're interested in reading it, feel free to just pause the video. Their Tiger Stripe Wolverine was a home run for me. That doesn't mean it was 100% perfect, it did have its issues, but it did enough right at the right price point to make me happy. First in-hand impressions for Brown Suit Wolverine? So far so good. I'm loving the colors, and this figure is extremely heavy. What we're going to do now is get all of his accessories laid out in the light box and take a closer look at everything he comes with. Starting off with the display base first. I like the idea of these Hono Studio bases. Like, in theory, it's pretty cool having the comic book in the background. But practicality-wise, the bottom part of the base is far too large for Wolverine. He doesn't need this much display base real estate. Up front, we've got his name off to one side in that classic comic book looking font. I love the color choice, by the way. A yellow border around the edge. Then up top, a satin black textured finish. On the underside, you can see the waffling, which does make this base feel a little bit cheap and flimsy. They have gone with a translucent flight pole as well as a translucent crotch grabber. This back comic book panel thing is made of clamshell plastic, and I apologize for my comic book choice. I'm not much of a comic book collector, so I didn't have one featuring Wolverine in his brown costume. Once you take it out, the display base becomes more easy to work with, but the slot is permanently visible unless you install a piece of foam or something back there. By far, my favorite accessory here is the Muramasa blade. If you're not sure why the katana is red, go and do some research into its backstory. It's actually quite interesting. This was forged using some of Wolverine's own blood. It goes deeper than that. It's worth having a read, just take my word for it. It's painted in this shiny metallic red. There's some gold below the blade and then down here for the bottom part of the hilt. And we've got some black in between the diamond/woven parts for the handle. If only this was made out of die cast. Unfortunately, it is made out of a flimsy feeling plastic. Which is weird because the old school Sideshow brown costume Wolverine, this one is almost in direct competition with it, also came with the Muramasa blade, if you got the exclusive, and it was made out of die cast. So if you have that one and you're planning on selling it to upgrade to this, maybe see if you can hold on to that katana. We get some slash effects for his claws, 4 of the smaller ones and 2 of the bigger ones. They're cast in this blue tinted translucent plastic, and there's some metallic silver over the top just on the high spots. They are quite soft and flexible, so I don't think you have anything to worry about when it comes to breakage. He comes with the same exact array of mouth plates as Tiger Stripe Wolverine, plus a bonus brand new one being the wide open mouth screaming faceplate. We will try all of these out on him a little bit later. And lastly, an array of hands, ranging from gripping hands for the Muramasa blade, to open palm hands, then 2 closed fists with the claws on them. The claws are made of plastic and they are not removable. Hot Toys were pretty sneaky in the promo pics for Tiger Stripe Wolverine. They showed these panels on the back of the open palm hands. The seam is a real seam. These pieces are glued in place, but they're just that, they're glued in. You cannot remove them, and you cannot interchange them between the closed fists or any of the other hands, so please do not try it. You are going to break something. What we're going to do now is get Wolverine himself out here. Standing straight up and down in the light box, no crazy poses or accessories or anything like that. It turns out, lightning does strike twice, at least when it comes to Wolverine. Hono took what they did well the first time, slapped a cheeky brown suit on it, and voila, another massive W for them. They killed it with the proportions. He's stocky, muscular, he's bulky looking, and that's exactly what comic book Wolverine calls for. The same thing can be said about the colors they've chosen. The color palette does a decent job of homaging various different runs featuring brown suit Wolverine. This kind of inaccurate catch-all style comic book figure works for some, but not others, as it's not accurate to anything really. It's brown suit Wolverine through a Hot Toys lens. This is them giving us their own interpretation of what he would look like, blending iconic styles together from various different artists. It was successful in almost every single way. Up close and personal, kicking things off with Wolverine's head sculpt. This is one of those very rare occasions where I'm happy that they got lazy and reused a sculpt, because the brown suit figure comes with a new mouth plate that's now compatible with the Tiger Stripe figure because they're using the same exact head sculpt. Some people probably would have preferred a bespoke one for this outfit with shorter and maybe brown ear wings. They could have even gone with a different expression for the eye area of the cowl. Like I said, I'm okay with the reuse not only because of the new mouthplate compatibility, but because this is my favorite look for Wolverine. The big, exaggerated ear wings, they're just my thing. It reminds me of the animated series look for him. Now, the mouthplate is lacking when it comes to skin texture, but there is that speckling of paint on the surface and a little bit of 5 o'clock shadow down below, nothing crazy. Even though the top part of the mask is PVC, whereas the outfit is spandex, they managed to get the color and texture match and sheen match pretty darn close. From a distance, the top part of the head is far enough away from the fabric that it almost tricks the eye into thinking that they could be made out of the same stuff. They've painted the eyes in matte white so they contrast against the black ear wings, which do have some leather grain texture on them. This mouth plate was my least favorite of the bunch with Tiger Stripe Wolverine, but it's slowly been growing on me. Something about it, when you combine it with a head tilt, it just makes him look cocky, which is perfect for comic book Wolverine. Speaking of perfect for comic book Wolverine, this faceplate is still my favorite of the bunch. It works so freaking well with the built-in expression for the cowl with the furrowed brow look and the crunched up nose, so it does help you sell dynamic poses. I particularly like how they've gone with grey for the teeth rather than white, so it allows the eyes to be the brightest thing on the mask and they stand out way more because of it. So this is the newest mouth plate of the bunch. It's currently exclusive to this figure, but it's compatible with Tiger Stripe Wolverine. We'll pop it on that body in the pros and cons segment. Yeah, from certain angles and with the head tilted forward, absolutely this works. But from others, like right there, it comes across goofy as hell for me. It is going to depend on how you plan on displaying this guy in your collection, whether or not this mouth plate is going to work for you. At least it's fully detailed on the inside, with a wet and glossy looking tongue in there. Back to the default, out-of-the-box, neutral expression mouth plate. Let's discuss his body and the outfit. The body is the same as Tiger Stripe Wolverine's. That's to be expected. I didn't think they were going to make any changes. It's big and chonky and muscular, and the entire figure feels quite heavy. They've used the same stretchy spandex for the yellow sections as Tiger Stripe. There's this dotted pattern on the surface, but it's quite thin, so you can see the musculature poking through. They didn't have to rely on any kind of airbrush shading. But do watch out for the pinch points like behind his knees, because if the fabric gets caught in there, I wouldn't be surprised if you do some damage. Then we get to the brown parts of the outfit. They've made the brown pieces out of multiple different styles of material. We've got sculpted plastic for his trunks, we're about to get there. A vinyl / heat transfer overlay for the chest part. There's some piping around the edges and some texture over the top. Then they've used a PVC sculpted plastic for his shoulder pads. I thought for sure, because there's this seam right at the end of them where they meet the vest part of the fit, that they would be separate floating pieces attached to the arms. But they're not. They're glued or fused somehow to the vest part of the outfit, and I'm okay with the way they've done that, but I would have preferred if they were made out of the same fabric, and that way there wouldn't have been this visible seam line. Not a deal breaker, just if you're going to have a seam line, you may as well make it functional, otherwise have it be one piece and completely seamless. Speaking of seamless, unplanned segue, I promise. The arms are made of medical silicone, just like modern Hot Toys seamless figures. We've got some vein work, plenty of skin texture, and some arm hair that does extend down to underneath his gauntlets. The gauntlets are free floating, and because medical silicone is as soft as it is, there's no friction whatsoever. You can move these gauntlets around and you're not going to do any damage to the paint applications on the surface of the silicone arms. Some people gave me shit for saying claws were too long with Tiger Stripe Wolverine, and I guess I'm about to get it again because they're still too long. As you can see, they are ginormous. They're significantly longer than his forearms. That doesn't make sense. They're supposed to retract inside of his forearms, and if they were this length, they would go all the way up to his bicep, and that would mean he wouldn't actually be able to move his arms. They are made of plastic, so do be careful when you're installing the swoosh effects on these blades. Not bad, but because they are made of plastic, like we just established, they're these flimsy, floppy things, and the swooshing blade effects are very heavy. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they droop down over time due to the weight of these pieces, especially the middle chonky big one. I am tempted to use the smaller ones, but people rightly pointed out in my Tiger Stripe video that you're meant to do it like this, the big one in the middle and the two smaller ones on the outer claws. I think I finally figured out how to pronounce Hono Studio correctly. The H is silent, so it's more like, oh no, Studio, I am so sorry. I like the figure, but I hate these trunks. Going with sculpted plastic for his underoos makes them look like Speedos. They had to cut away so much plastic around the front so the legs could move forward that they just come across looking ridiculous. These should have been fabric every day of the week. They could have made them out of the same exact stuff as what's up here on his upper torso. Yes, there's some wrinkling and some texture and some stitching lines sculpted in. The belt looks good in a darker red with the X around the front. But I don't think there's any excuse for the way they executed these trunks. One thing that I do appreciate, a big change with this guy versus the other Wolverine, is that they ditched the panel lines, so now the outfit is significantly cleaner. It's just the screen printed spandex, and the musculature for the legs poking through down below. His boots, I've said leather grain texture way too many times already, so we'll go with just leather texture on the surface. The outer spike is bigger than the inner one, and these are made of rubbery plastic, so there's no worries when it comes to breakage. It is a split cut boot design, so the foot moves independently of the rest of the boot. Plus, we've even got some toe articulation and some sculpted tread on the underside. Head swap time. I'm here to answer the question, can you display this body with the Sideshow brown suit unmasked Wolverine head sculpt on it? Maybe is the answer. It looks a little bit out of scale for me, as though the head sculpt is too large on the body. In a dynamic pose, it could work better. At least now you know what this looks like. You know what? Not bad. If you're going for some Deadpool and Wolverine, John Byrne classic brown and tan action, you could do a hell of a lot worse than this. This is a third-party cowled Hugh Jackman sculpt that's meant to be paired up with the Days of Future Past body. It, for some reason, has the opposite issue compared to the Sideshow Logan sculpt. This one is too small on the body. Dude, this is the 1973 Days of Future Past Wolverine head sculpt, and it may have just now found its permanent home on this body in the display because it properly connects to the neck connector, it sits in place, it's not going anywhere, unlike those other two sculpts, where one was too big and the other was too small. It was a real Goldilocks situation, too big, too small, and this one is just right. Enough messing around, back to stock. Do let me know in the comments down below which of the head swaps you prefer, or is he better just looking like this? For a quick side-by-side comparison, this is how you do reuse. Two figures using very similar parts and pieces from the same exact company, yet because of the changes they made to the outfit and the color palette, they look completely different from one another. I've got no problems whatsoever displaying these two standing side by side in the collection. It's a darn shame really, because with this new Hono Studio figure, it now marks the end of my custom brown suit Wolverine's run in my collection. He is officially retiring after this video is done. He's a little bit shorter than the Hono Studio one, and I think the head sculpt is significantly worse than Hono's attempt. It's curtains for the brown suit Wolverine custom, but it isn't for astonishing X-Men Wolverine. This is the Sideshow one using the Tiger Stripe Sideshow gloves and boots, and the brown suit Wolverine head sculpt. I know the earwings aren't accurate to astonishing, I'm still working up the confidence to trim them down and get them to look the way they're supposed to when Logan is wearing this outfit. The stock Sideshow Wolverine body is, interestingly enough, taller than the Hono Studio one. A comic book accurate short king he may not be, he's shorter than Sideshow's Cyclops, and seeing any kind of height difference between these two is more than enough for me. I don't need Wolverine to be any shorter than this. Going over articulation, I've taken the claws off just so that he doesn't scratch me while moving the joints around. Starting off with the head sculpt, it's on a double ball peg, a fixed neck, but it's covered in like a rubbery material, so it's somewhat flexible. Looking forward to there. Looking up to there, heaps of range for a fastball special pose. Swivel and pivot side to side. The arms go up to there, they move pretty freely, unhindered by the shoulder pads. Going forward to there, there's a butterfly joint at the shoulder that hinges up and down. Swivel at the bicep underneath the medical silicone, but to access it, I would suggest bending the elbow first, then you can use that to leverage the joint inside. Speaking of the elbow, there's a double bend on ratchets going past 90. For the wrist peg, it's a ratcheted hinge and swivel. Just be careful when you're manipulating the torso. My Tiger Stripe Wolverine didn't fare super well when I crunched him forward. The seam split up the back from the bottom all the way up to the top of the neck. So just adjust the fabric as you're doing this. Crunching forward to there, going back to there, swivel, and pivot side to side. His legs go forward to there before they collide with the diaper piece, which is a bit flexible, but it doesn't really get out of the way. Going out to there, swivel at the upper thigh, double bend at the knee, going past 90, and then a hinge and swivel at the ankles, plugged into the foot at an angle, so it's good for forward and back rotation, as well as ankle tilt. And lastly, toe articulation. Moving on to the 3 cool and 3 annoying things. The first annoying thing is this, for me at least, is an absolute no-no. I like to keep my boxes in pristine condition, so asking us to cut out the bottom of the box to then use as a cardboard backdrop? Yeah, I don't think so. I like the artwork, but I would have preferred this as a separate piece of cardboard that's not part of the box, rather than an arts and crafts project. The second annoying thing is the idea of this display base is pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie, I like it in theory. In practice, yeah, not so much, because this part where you pop the comic book in is not UV treated. It's made of this super thin clamshell plastic, so please don't bust any comics out of slabs to put them in here. They will be completely unprotected. And the bottom part of the base is absolutely massive. You can only really use these bases with the backdrops in them at the very back of your cabinets, because if you have this in front of other figures, the comic book is going to block them entirely. The third annoying thing is not only is the sculpted plastic thong back, but it's worse than ever this time. It's misaligned on my copy, so it sits down at the back but up at the front, and I've tried to adjust it. It simply won't budge, so now it's currently eating into the brown part of his outfit that tucks underneath it. The first cool thing is the medical silicone they've used for the arms. This is by far my favorite modern Hot Toys innovation. Stealing this type of silicone from the medical industry, that's why it's called medical silicone, to use on 1/6 scale figures, was a stroke of genius, because this stuff is designed to be durable and paintable. That's how they can get so much skin texture and even arm hair on the surface. The second cool thing is we get some new exclusive accessories with Brown Suit Wolverine. Not only did they include the Muramasa blade that was forged out of Wolverine's own blood, but we get a much angrier faceplate that's also backwards compatible with Tiger Stripe Wolverine's head sculpt. The third cool thing may not be aesthetically pleasing to look at up close, but it's also not all that ugly. I'm of course talking about the toe joint. The functionality it provides for articulation and for posability is great. The joint is sturdy enough, friction holds it in place, so that you can get Wolverine balancing on his toes. Wrapping up on Hono Studio Brown Suit Wolverine. The figure itself we'll get back to. Let's take a moment to discuss the release strategy for this piece. Perplexing is the word I would use to describe it. Hono was meant to be Hot Toys' lower price point and, in their words, not mine, accessible brand. Then, by them turning around and making an exclusive figure that they knew full well wouldn't be all that accessible, that doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Luckily, there are ways to get this guy. Still, I'm not a fan of how they decided to go about this. Right, back to the figure. It's dope. The only complaints I have are that the trunks look stupid as hell, and the claws are too long, plus not made of die-cast. Everything else, home run. He doesn't even feel like a budget offering to me. The heft in hand, due to the metal endoskeleton underneath the insanely detailed medical silicone arms, makes this guy feel very premium. And they even included some new accessories such as his katana, plus the screaming mouthplate, which is compatible with their first Wolverine release. Overall, he may not be accurate to any one particular run of Wolverine in this suit, but he takes some of the best elements of a few of them, blends that all together, and ends up looking all the better for it, at least in my opinion. So at the end of this, yes, yes, yes. More comic book X-Men figures, please, Hot Toys and Hono Studio. I wouldn't be surprised if this is not their last Wolverine, because they don't like to invest in brand new bodies like this if they're not going to get their money's worth out of it. Maybe Astonishing in the future, or a grey X-Force variant? We'll just have to wait and see. Now, I got mine at a discount from Pop Collectibles. As always, do your own research, make sure you're comfortable before buying. I have popped a link to their site along with the discount code Justin's Collection for 5% off your order if you do decide to buy from them in the description below. While you're down there, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button if you like the sound of seeing your name in the end credits of my reviews. Like, comment, and subscribe. We'll catch you in the next video.